or good afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this. In this video, this is video number 2 on our training videos. I'm going to be discussing how to create a CMA for pricing strategy. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you could do this. I'm not going to show every single detail. I'm just kind of showing you the steps to take to be able to create your own. But you should get a general idea of how to come up with a pricing strategy based off of these techniques. So the first thing that we're going to start with is, since we're already in our MLS here, we're going to start with how to do that using your MLS options. Now, the first thing that you want to do is going to be, clearly you just want to find something. And so if you're working with this could go 2 ways, sorry. If you're working with a seller, you're going to obviously want to create a pricing strategy, but that home isn't on the market already. So you got to find things that are comparable. If you're working with a buyer, then you want to try to find something that is going to help you come up with a good price to offer. Now in this market, it's a little bit different because people are just like throwing numbers out there without even really knowing if it's a comparable offer or not. But for right now, we're just going to stick on the listing side, and we're going to assume that this is in a fairly popular neighborhood and there are comps available. If there are not comps available, obviously you're going to have to go a little more detailed, but we're going to just keep it simple for now. And then if you need one-on-one training with something that maybe doesn't have any comps, or it's kind of a hard thing to compare, then we can sit down and go through that on a one-on-one. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to search for something in that neighborhood or in that area. So you could do this one of 2 ways. You could either go down here to subdivision and type in that subdivision, or if you want to look up something directly related to that address, you could do it within a certain range of that address. I would recommend probably starting at 1 mile and working your way out if there's no comps within 1 mile. But for this example, we're just going to use Vermilion as our subdivision example. So we're going to do Vermilion. We're going to say it is single family. And then what we want to do is go ahead and go down here. We want to use expireds, closed, under contract. I don't want to use coming soons. I just want to use active, under contract, closed, and expired. And the reason that I want to use closed and expired is because the closed is going to get us our best stat possible. So this is going to tell us what the list price was versus the sell price, how long it stayed on the market, stuff like that. Under contract, the only reason I'm using these is because we want to say this house was priced at this point and it went under contract. So if we price around that same point, then we would have a better chance of going under contract. And then for active, the only reason I'm including active is because we want to say, here's your competition right now. Here's what's on the market right now in your neighborhood. And then expired, we're going to include expired so we can say, here's a top price point where it did not sell. And we want to make sure we stay in the market, not on the market, and that way we are not listing it too high. Now you see here we do have 65 matches without even doing anything else. So I want to go ahead and kind of narrow this down a little bit. So let's say that we want to look for something that's, the house that we're trying to sell is 4 bedrooms. So we want to look for stuff that's at least 4 bedrooms. Actually, yeah, let's do 4 bedrooms for now, see what we come up with. It has, let's say 3.5 baths, or let's say 2.5 baths. So right now we're going to do total full baths 2, total half baths 1. And then, so that brought us down to 11 matches. Let's leave it at that and see what we get. And do know that this comes down to the last 6 months. So if we want to narrow that down a little bit, since market has changed quite a bit in that time, let's narrow it down to the last 3 months and see what we get. So now we have 7 matches. So I want to go ahead and click my results and see what I have. Okay, great. So we have 2 under contract, and then we have a lot sold, which is pretty good. So this is something that we can very much use as a comparable. Our HLA is pretty similar. This one's a little bit higher, but you know, otherwise all the closed ones are pretty spot on. So that's good. So now what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to highlight these. So what you're going to do is click this box right here to highlight them all. And I'm actually going to just take number 2 off. And the reason I'm taking number 2 off is because it does not seem like it's much higher in a HLA, and we kind of just want to use all of these. Now what you see here is all of these were built last year. So that tells me that these are all new builds, whereas these are not. This one that's under contract is not, but that's okay. We're still going to use it. So now what we want to do is go down here. Now you could create CMA from here. I don't like creating an actual CMA using Matrix. I kind of just like using the stats feature. And then what I do is I can create a full CMA in RPR. So we're going to talk about that next. But just so you know what it looks like, let's just do a quick CMA. And this is kind of what it just shows you. So it breaks it down and it says, here's how many beds, here's how many baths, year built, total HLA, stuff like that. So it breaks it down to just exactly what we were looking at. Here's our sell price versus list price percentages. So we can see that, I mean, that even the average is over 100%, which is insane right now. So we have here even the under contract one. So it stayed on the market for 2 days. And that price per square foot is going to be super important for us as well. So I like to use price per square foot versus like list price versus sales price. So this is going to give you, like I said, that really quick CMA for your client. If they just kind of want to look at numbers, like this is perfect for them. But what I want to do is go to stats for myself and then go to tabular. And this kind of just shows the same thing, but looks a little bit cleaner. And so we can see here that our under contract is listed at $152 per square foot. Obviously, we're not going to know what that sales price was until after it sells. But when we look at our closed, we always want to just take note of this average. I don't really pay attention to the min and max. I just do the average. So here our average price per square foot sold was $157.03, and our average sales price versus list price is 104%. So this is kind of where you could say, hey, you know, based off, now clearly this one priced a little bit higher, but that's okay. We can work with that. It's not a big deal. It is a new market, and these were all sold in 2020, so prices have gone up. But basically what we would do was take this price per square foot and we would times it of whatever your actual square footage was and determine, okay, well, this is a brand new house. So clearly we need to make sure that that price per square foot is probably a little bit lower since this is a 10-year-old house. But it seems like they priced it very well. I didn't look at the actual home, but based off of these stats right here, it was only on the market for 2 days. So for them, it was priced very well. So this is how you do a quick CMA. If you needed more options than that, you would just go to criteria and you would just go through this and kind of change whatever you needed to change to have more options. So now you see that if I just leave it at 4 bedrooms and don't put that bathroom count in there, and I go to my results, I get a lot more results actually, yeah. And that's still for 90 days. So what's going to happen here is, again, I'm going to kind of go through, and now we see a huge variation of square footage here. So now let's say I only want something in the like 24 to 3,000 range. So now I'm going to go back because when you have like a 3,200 square foot versus a 2,400 square foot, it's not really going to compare very well. So we want to go here and we want to change our HLA to that range, or sorry, 3,000. And now we get 9 matches. So we only got a couple more, but that's okay. Again, we're just going to highlight all, and we're going to go to stats, and we're going to see what those stats are for that. And again, you can see here that the average now is at 155 versus I think it was 157 previously. And that sales price versus list price is still over 100%. So we can definitely take this into consideration to be able to use a very good estimate for our price point. So that's how you do a quick stats in your your MLS. Now what I'm going to do is, let's just say this was our property and this is the one we were trying to get a CMA for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy this address, and you'll see why in a second. So what you're going to do is, when you're back on your MLS homepage, you're going to go to these realtor tools right here, and you're going to click on Realtors Property Resource, and this is what we call RPR. Now, your RPR is so helpful, and if you're not using it, I highly encourage you to really take time to look into it. It has a lot of great information in it. But what we're going to use it for today is basically just to do another type of CMA. Now, when you're doing this type of CMA, you have different options. You could do it as just doing like a property valuation. You could do a full seller report if you want, but we're just going to do a very generic CMA, and this puts it together in like a flyer or a booklet format to be able to send to your clients. So once we're in here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to create a CMA. Okay, clearly I haven't logged into this in a while. We're going to create a CMA, and it's going to make me go through all this stuff. Create. Okay. I don't know why it's not letting me do. Oh, there we go. All right, so now I'm going to put in my address up here. Can just do this, and then I'm going to let it search, and it's going to find what we need. Maybe it's being super slow for me today. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so now that we have this loaded, you can see here that it has all sorts of information in here. Clearly, since it is one that was already listed, it already has the listing agent information in here. But basically, when you go down here, you're just going to see just so much information about this property. You're going to see all of the history that it had in the MLS. You're going to see what type of schools it's assigned to, price change history, interior features. And then over here, you're also going to see more about this neighborhood, zip code, stuff like that. So what we want to focus on just strictly for today is going to be this comp analysis value. So we're going to just click create CMA. And then what that's going to do is it's going to bring in some options. So we could either do a comparative analysis, or we could do a more detailed evaluation. But for now, we're just going to stick with comparative analysis. So we're going to go ahead and confirm the facts of the home. So if we know that it's something different than what's listed on here, then we would put it over here. But for now, we're just going to confirm these facts and stick with that. So let's just remember that we know that this is a 4-bedroom and 2.5 baths. So now we want to find comps for that. And it's always going to have up here information about that. So you'll see what the living area size is and the lot size and the built time frame. So now here, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of use this as a general area to select our comp properties. Now, off market date, so we have active for sale pending. We're going to go ahead and do active under contract and then closed. So we'll leave it at that. And then we want it from 3 months from now, which is January, I can't think right now, January 14th. Okay, so we're gonna do that until now. We wanna make sure that we're doing at least 4 bedrooms. Baths, we wanna do, let's just do 2 to 3 baths here. And then you see here how it already has this living square footage. That's a big gap. So what we wanna do is the square footage here is 2762. So again, I'm just gonna leave it at about 250 before and after that. So I'm gonna do 2,500 to 3,000 square foot. I'm not too concerned about the lot size. And the only reason for that is because I know that in this neighborhood, there's not going to be like a very big difference in lot size. So I'm just going to leave it at this, and then we're just going to do a quick search and let's see what happens. Okay, great. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, probably about 6 total if we're including these 2, but I probably won't. I'm just going to include these. So what I want to do is I want to just draw a shape here. So I'm going to do this, but I want to edit this area to here. Cool. All right, so I'm doing it like this, and then now I'm going to modify that search. All right, so now we have 4 properties to use as our comp. And now we can see here, what I'm just kind of scanning for is to see if it's comparable in square footage, beds, baths, stuff like that. So what we see here is we have, yeah, looks pretty good. So we have 4 bed, 3 baths for all of them except for this one, but I'm still going to include it because it's still pretty comparable in kind of the price point that we're looking at. It's actually the highest closed price out of all those. So what I want to do, is go ahead and add to my comp list over here. And then we know that we have all of our comps that we're going to use for that. And then we have a range here. So I'm going to update that valuation. And let's see what it comes up with. So now we have results of comp analysis comes out to about 424,658, or if we round it up, it's about 425. And now if we go back, so it was about 425. And then let's see, what is it actually? It was listed at 419.9. So like we said earlier, based off of this, they really did price it accordingly. And I think they did a great job pricing it. And then what you would do here is you would just create a seller's report, because most likely what happened is they did it at 419.9, which is about 6,000 less than what that report could have, or what that comp analysis came out with. And that way now they probably have multiple offers and are going to get above that list price. So when you're pricing it, even if you're pricing it a little bit lower than what that comp analysis says, there's a good chance that if it's still priced correctly, it's going to go into multiple offers. And if it doesn't, then at least you are taking the chance of it appraising and not worrying about overpricing it and it staying on the market for a long time. So here you have the different variations of the reports that you could choose. So again, you have that seller's report, that property report, and you see beside it where it says approximately how many pages it is. Now what you want to do is you want to view the sample, because actually they have the proper seller's report. So we want to view the sample, and then this is 81 pages. I highly recommend not including all of that, but you can kind of scroll through here and see what's all included. Obviously, we don't need all the pictures of the house. We don't need the full history. We don't need all of that stuff. So the way that we're going to do this is you're going to click this plus sign right here, and you're only going to select the things that you want to include. So let's see, subject, we don't need all of the property values. We don't need the home facts because they're living in the home. Don't need the refined value, or actually let's leave that. We don't need property photos or history or historical photos. We don't need the price change history. Market activity, not really too concerned about that, but we'll leave. No, we're going to just do selected recent market activity, and then we're going to leave the comps on there. And then so since we're just doing a generic market activity, we're not going to keep all of this in here. And then we're going to just keep the pricing strategy on there as well. And now what I want to do is over here, you want to make sure that your information is correct. And you can put it to where it looks like it's coming directly from you. It looks like you're the one creating it, which you are. They're just doing all the data for you in RPR. So you want to do all of this. I actually need to edit mine because it's still to my old last name. But once you create it, you can select how much of that information you want to include on that cover page. I don't need my fax number, but yeah. So we're going to leave it at that. And then what you're going to do is you have the option to create a personalization for it, which is great. You have the option down here to either display now, which means you're going to have it come up as a PDF on your computer, or you can email it to the person directly. Here's what I recommend though. I do not recommend sending it to them directly once you do this. I recommend always doing display now, waiting for it to download, and then reviewing it first. And then that way there, what you can do is you can save it as an attachment, and then you can send it from your direct email to be able to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, here's the property valuation report that I talked about with you, that I would come up with for you. Based off of this, here's kind of what our strategy for pricing is looking like. I also typically like to just talk over this with them in person or over the phone or through a Zoom call or something like that. But either way, I always send this to them and then do a follow-up. And then that way we're able to talk through it, because they're obviously just going to see the higher number on this. But what you want to point out to them is like that price per square foot, that current days on market. And this is extremely helpful when you have a contingency. So if they're buying another home, but they need to sell their house first, you are able to look in that neighborhood or look in that area and say, okay, well, things are going about 15 days on market in your area. So we need to make sure that we're pricing it so we stay in that, or coming under contract a little bit sooner than that. So that way there you're able to move forward in your transaction for the house that you want to purchase. So what we're going to do is we're going to run that report. It's going to take a couple minutes to download, and that's okay. But once you hear it down, or once it downloads, it's just going to have like a little doorbell or any other notification sound that it may come up with. But basically, it's just to let you know that that report's ready. Anytime you're needing to access that report again, you can go to this report feature, or this reports tab right here, and go back to it. So I have my report bell turned on. And then you can see here that I have one pending seller's report, and it does stay in the system for, I think, 30 days, maybe 45 days. But what's going to happen is you still are able to customize that report. And you want to look at it to make sure that everything looks good before you send it over and there's not too much information. And so we're just going to wait for this to finish up. It typically only takes about 1 or 2 minutes for it to finish. But you can see that it is a little extra work in regards to doing it this way versus doing it in Matrix. So if you wanted to just get like a quick CMA, what are things going for in this market? Or what are things going for in my neighborhood? That's a great way to do it just in the MLS. But if you want it to look like a little more professional and you actually want to present a full report to them with the comps, then that's when I would use RPR. Another great reason to use just the CMA basics, then if you wanted to just create just a really small email to somebody that reached out and was like, hey, can you let me know kind of what my neighborhood stats are or something like that. That would be a great time to do that. So you see here that our report has been generated. So we're just going to download that report. And you see here, it does have information here as if I were the one that created it. Talks a little bit about that property and then the properties that we used for our comps. And then we have our comps right here. And then it goes into each comp individually. And then I did include this market activity, but that's only because I wanted them to see kind of what the generic market looks like in there. I just didn't put the full market activity. And then it talks about the recommended pricing strategy. So if we're using the selected comps, then our median price is $420, which it was listed at $419.9, which, you know, again, is right on point with that. If we're just using this number, again, they're still pretty straightforward. You don't have to get them to sign this. This is just kind of a, hey, I understand this is what we talked about kind of thing. And so what I would do in this situation is, I like the way this looks right now, so I would go ahead and download it to my computer, email it over to them, and give a follow-up date. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, here's the CMA that I talked about that I would create for you. Please take a few minutes to review over it. I'll give you a call, let's say tonight at 7:30 p.m. and we can discuss any questions you have. And that way there, it still gives them time to look over it after they've gotten home from work or after dinner or whatever. I would kind of create that time frame, or I would just say, does 7:30 p.m. or 1 p.m. tomorrow sound better for you? Now, super important for this though, you don't want to create these CMAs for somebody who you don't already have a listing agreement for. And the reason I say that is because, well, you could, but what you don't want to do is put all this effort into it and they're kind of just shopping around looking for agents. And then you do all of this work for another agent to get that listing. So you want to make sure you really do have this listing secured before you send this over. But in all, this is how you would go through RPR and MLS to create a generic CMA for your client. If you have any questions or you need me to do a one-on-one, I'm always available for that. If you want to go a little more detailed into these reports or have any questions that weren't discussed. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next video.